Hello, I'm Anita McVeigh. Denmark's Justice Minister says the unauthorised drones spotted over several airports last night were part of a hybrid attack intended to spread fear. Aalborg airport in the north of the country was closed overnight when unauthorised drones were spotted circling overhead. 3 other smaller airports also reported similar activity but weren't closed. It follows temporary closures of both Copenhagen and Oslo airports on Monday in what Denmark's Prime Minister called the most serious attack on Danish critical infrastructure to date. Here's the Danish Justice Minister.
Without drawing any conclusions regarding the evening and night's events in Denmark, we can state that sabotage and cyber attacks and other forms of hybrid attacks have become an all too recurring part of European reality. The purpose is to stress test borders and create fear and uncertainty among the population and decision makers. And we must also state that the threat from hybrid attacks is something that is here to stay.
And with me now is our security correspondent, Frank Gardner. So, Frank, when the Danish government talks about hybrid attacks, what exactly do they mean?
Yeah, it's one of these expressions that's kind of crept into daily usage in the last few years. What it means is an attack that is damaging to a country or its infrastructure or its population, but is not necessarily, it stops short of open warfare. And it's often very hard to trace where it's come from. It's also known as grey zone warfare, or kind of sub-threshold warfare. And the suspicion is that anything like this, suspicion immediately falls on Russia because of there have been documented cases of, well, for example, the drones that went into Poland recently. There's nobody denying
just a few weeks ago.
Yeah. Over the night of September the 9th, 10th. Nobody's denying that those were Russian drones, but there are other sort of anonymous things. Hybrid warfare or hybrid attacks also include things like election interference, disinformation, putting pressure on populations in some form, often where it's hard to actually trace where it's back to. Cyber attacks are a classic example.
Well, actually, I was just wondering, as you said that, whether you would talk about or consider drones along with cyber attacks as being part of this hybrid issue.
Well, yes, but I think we've got to be absolutely clear here. There is no evidence to say that this was Russia. The suspicion is that Russia was behind it because Russia clearly has a vested interest in punishing those Western countries that are helping Ukraine to resist the full-scale Russian invasion. But in this particular case, the Kremlin's denied it. That's nothing new there. They deny everything. But there is no evidence to point to this. And we've got to be careful here because you remember the Nord Stream gas pipelines that went across the Baltic and they got blown up in late 2022. Immediately, everybody, including us, the media, we all thought this has got to be Russia. The only people arrested for this so far that I'm aware of are Ukrainians. That's not to say that it was a Ukrainian government-sanctioned operation. Could have been something that was, some rogue operation. But, one's got to be careful. You've got to follow the evidence with these things.
And as you say, in this instance, Russia has denied any involvement. What more then, Frank, can airports, to take these examples, or other critical infrastructure do to actually protect themselves against drones?
So the Danish Defence Ministry said we could have shot them down, but we didn't because there are people nearby. I mean, Aalborg is a substantial city, and that's a important airport. Remember, this happened as well at Copenhagen Airport only 2 nights ago and at Oslo Airport. And there have been other ones in Sweden before that. What can they do? I mean, lasers are something that's been looked into, nets, but ultimately it's really about spotting them before they go up. I think we should just distinguish between big explosive armed drones that are fired every night at Ukraine. Big things as big as this table, 8 foot long, nearly 3 meters long, carrying several kilograms of explosive, and drones that are used to disrupt airports, which are often things, little quadcopters that you can buy relatively easily, probably over the internet, which are simply designed to disrupt aviation because if they collided with an engine, for example, it could bring down a plane.
OK, Frank, thank you very much. Frank Gardner, our security correspondent.